Hello and welcome back to our Go crash course. This is episode 2. We're going to be learning about variables today within the Go language. So I've got here a basic directory. It's empty except I ran go mod init in it. So I've got a go.mod file and I have the main.go from the first lesson. If you don't remember how to set this all up, jump back over to the first episode and watch through that. It's a little bit longer. It's about 10 minutes in length, but it'll walk you through how to install Go and how to actually set up an initial project directory. So I'm going to switch over views here and jump over to my text editor. I use VS Code, as I mentioned in the first video. And I went ahead and blew up the text. So hopefully this is large enough for those of you. Some of you were complaining that the text was way too small in my previous videos. So if this is still too small, please let me know in the comments below and I can make sure to blow it up even larger than this in future tutorials. Aside from having just a basic Go file up here ready to go and our project structure over here, I also opened up my embedded terminal so I can run commands here, specifically the Go run command so that I can see things live as we're making these changes here. So let's jump straight in and start defining our first variables here. Okay. Within Go, we use the var keyword to declare a new variable. Okay. So var is our variable declaration. As you can see from the type hint that drops up here, that's how we use it. And then if I hit enter on that, it will set up the structure of a variable here. So I can do a string. I'm going to say hello, and I'm going to make the type, we're going to make this a string, okay? And then I'm going to actually, I can leave this here and have this empty, and then I can just print out what we have here. And we can see what the default value is for a string. I'm also going to comment out this line here. We don't need the hello world showing up in here anymore. So down here, I'm going to say go run, and then I'm going to hit dot in this directory. This tells me that I want to run the main function within this directory. And when I hit go, you'll see that nothing prints out here. Now, why is that? Why is there nothing here? That's because the default string is just an empty string. Okay? So if I want it to actually have a value, I have to assign something into it. I can do that in line here by using the equal sign, and then I can pass in a string. So I'm going to pass in the same string that we used above here. I'm going to say hello world. I'm going to save this and then I'm going to run it. Okay. Now when we run this, now we can see that the string that I passed in when we print it is actually showing up. Okay. So every variable type has a default value that it's going to use if you don't actually use it. Some of those are nil, which means there's nothing defined there. Some of them, in the case of like string, it is an empty string. In the case of things like integers, the value is going to be 0. Okay, so this is great. This shows us the basic structure of a declaration. But what if we want this to be used in other places throughout our program? Okay, so we want to create a string that we can use pretty much anywhere. We can define variables outside of the function scope. So this is our function here, and these braces, the start and end brace here, that's the scope of our function. If I tried to use hello outside of this function, I would get a compiler error telling me that that is wrong. Okay, but I can here create a new var. We're going to call this name, and I'm going to set this up to my name, Chris. Okay, so if I save this, you'll see that I have my Go static check turned on, which means it's going to check me and tell me when variable names are unused and things like that. It'll show me squigglies here. So we can come down here and do format.print line, and we can print that name now. Okay. If I save this and run it, you should now see two things being printed out. Okay, hello world and Chris. Now, something that's fun here is that right here above this, I can actually change this to Chris Franklin instead. I can save this, and if I run it, you'll see that this name changed. Okay? Why did this name change? That's because I'm using var as the declaration here. Anything that's declared as var is a variable that can be assigned. But what if I don't want it to be changed? What if I want that to be constant and static and never change again? I can change this var to const, C-O-N-S-T. Okay, if I save that and I go to run this, you can see the squiggle here is going to tell me what's going to happen. The compiler is going to throw an error. If I try to run this, it's going to tell me you cannot assign to name. It's declared as constant. Okay, so this is how we create constant variables. Okay, and then we can create them at a global scope within the main package. Anything within the main package can use this name now. Okay. We'll talk about package scoping in our actual packages lesson, but for now, this will help you kind of understand how to declare variables that you can use and share within a single file. Okay. All right. Well, what else can we do? All right. Writing this all out, I want you to notice here that I didn't append the string on here as the type. The reason I didn't actually do that is because we can infer the type from the variable we are assigning into this this variable here. What the actual value we're assigning into the variable is a string, and we can infer that it is string, and the compiler will automatically assign string to us here for us. All right, but that's fun. But what if we want to do that inline and we don't want to use all this extra garbage of saying var and string and all of that, but we're going to put a value in there? Well, we can do that using a shorthand method for assigning a type and a variable and the value all in one line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variable here. I'm going to call this hello2, and I'm going to then use the colon equals. Okay. This colon equals tells me I want to declare a new variable. It's exactly like, it basically automatically expands this out for us. I want a new variable with a type string and hello2. It infers the string from the value I'm passing into it. So here I'm going to say hello again. Okay. And then I'm going to print this out just to prove that this is all working. Okay. So hello2. There we go. And if we run this, now we'll see that hello again is showing up here. Okay, so this is a shorthand way of assigning variables. You can only use the colon equals inside of a function. You cannot use it at the global scope. You have to use either const or var at the global scope to explicitly tell Go that you are creating a variable here. This colon equals is a shorthand that does not work outside of functions. Okay. Now, there are a whole bunch of other types that we can use besides strings. So this is fun, but let's look at a couple of the other types here. Okay, I want to create a new var, not a car, a var, and I'm going to say x, and I'm going to put in an integer. Okay, and then I'm going to say y colon equals 8. Okay, so we've got two new integers here. So this is great. This is a nice, easy way to define two different integers. Okay, and then if I do a print line on 12 minus 8, for instance, okay, or sorry, x minus y. Let's say that x minus y, and I print this out. What I'm going to see is that I get the value I expect out of here, 4. Okay, but what if I want to see the type? What is the type of this object being returned here? I didn't explicitly assign the type here, so I want to see what it is. We can do that by changing this print line to a printf, and then I can pass in a string and then pass in xy as an additional argument. And this string we're just going to say our type is %T, and then I'm going to give it a new line, okay, /n escape. Okay, once we do that, if I go ahead and run this, you'll see that my type is just int here. This is an integer. Okay, can I do return things other than integers? What if I want to increase my I'm subtracting or dividing two numbers? Let's say I'm dividing y by x. Y divided by x. Okay, if I do this, is this going to work? Okay, I'm going to get an integer. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to look at now printing out. We're going to see what the type is. If we run this, we're going to see that the type is an integer, and then I can add an outside parenthesis here, and I can cast this as something other than an integer and store this value within that. Okay, and so what we can do here is when I run it, you can see that now we're returning a float 64 here. We're storing the value of y divided by x into a float, and then we're printing that out. Okay, so let's talk real quick about other types that we could actually see here. Okay, so inside of Go, there is a Boolean, and I'll just go ahead and type these all out so that we can easily see them. So I'm going to put a big comment block here so we're not breaking any code. So we can talk about the bool type. We have, of course, the string type that we've already talked about. Then we have ints, but there's not just integers. There's an int 8, int 16, int 32, int 64. Those are all valid types that we can use as integers. We can also use unsigned integers, which is uint. And then same thing, we have uint 8 through uint 64. There is also a uint ptr. So this is a pointer into a u integer. Okay, so we have the same thing, 8, 16, 32, 64, and then a uint pointer. So it's a pointer to an unsigned integer in memory. Okay. We also have a couple of aliases that we can use that are very useful. So we have bytes. This is actually just an alias for uint 8. We also have a rune. This is an alias for int 32. Okay. A rune represents a Unicode code point. All right. So if we're storing a single code for Unicode, we can store those in runes. All right. As I mentioned, we have floats, but we have float 32 and float 64. The default value of the compiler is float 64. And then we have the ability to store complex objects. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about these, but there is a way to store them within the applications. Okay. So that's really it. That's all we need to cover about variables, how to store things into variables, how to use variables. We'll cover a few more shorthand methods later on. We'll show you how to do multi-line assignments, things like that in upcoming tutorials. But for now, this will at least get you started in this space. I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.